There are moments in global finance when the world shifts, not with explosions, but with quiet decisions made far from public view. What happened on November 15, 2024 is one of those moments. On that day, China quietly unloaded nearly $3 trillion in US-linked assets. No press conference, no warning, just a silent financial strike that will eventually touch every wallet holding dollars. Most Americans are still unaware. While people focused on grocery bills and inflation, Beijing made the opening move in what may become the largest financial power struggle of the modern era. And the weapon they used wasn't missiles or armies, it was the dollar itself. So what actually happened? China's central bank began a coordinated liquidation of US treasuries. Not a symbolic gesture, but an exit measured in trillions, more money than the GDP of the United Kingdom, more than India produces in a year. And they did it through hidden channels. Offshore funds, intermediaries, and sovereign accounts designed to keep the sell-off out of headlines. How do we know? Because the numbers in the Federal Reserve's custody data and Treasury capital flow reports suddenly shifted. Global liquidity patterns don't lie. China is deliberately stepping away from the dollar system. Why does this matter to you? Because the dollar's strength has defined the last 50 years. Ever since the Petrodollar deal in 1971, the world has been forced to trade in dollars, oil, manufacturing, agriculture, all of it. This gave America a privilege unmatched in history, the power to print money without losing global demand. But that privilege depends on trust. And trust has been fading. The US printed trillions to fund wars and bailouts. It weaponized its currency, freezing foreign assets and shutting out nations it disagreed with. The dollar stopped being neutral. It became a tool. China paid attention. For a decade they built a counter-system. They expanded BRICS, bringing in Saudi Arabia, the very country that created the petrodollar system. They forged currency agreements with Russia, Brazil, and dozens of partners so trade could bypass the dollar. And while the US ran up debt, China accumulated gold, far more than official reports admit. Some analysts believe Beijing may hold 20,000 to 30,000 tons. Gold is China's ace. If they announce even a partially gold-backed yuan, every nation holding paper dollars will have to reconsider its future. A currency tied to real value beats a currency backed by debt. And that brings us to the real danger. China is selling dollars before the new system is revealed. Once the announcement comes, other countries will rush to the exit. Central banks across the world hold mountains of US treasuries. If they start selling at the same time, the dollar won't just weaken. It will be overwhelmed. The moment the dollar loses its reserve currency status, the global financial landscape begins to shift through 6 brutal stages, each one more disruptive than the last. The first stage hits through interest rates. The only reason the United States can borrow cheaply today is because the world constantly buys US treasuries. Once that demand weakens, once China and other major holders become sellers instead of buyers, the US government will be forced to offer far higher yields just to attract capital. That shock passes instantly into everyday life. Mortgage rates don't creep upward, they blast from 7% to 15%. Auto loans double. Credit cards climb into the mid-30s. Borrowing becomes a privilege reserved for the wealthy. The housing market stalls, businesses lose access to credit, and the American economy begins to seize like an engine running without oil. From there, the second stage erupts. Inflation morphs into something uncontrollable. As the world stops needing dollars for trade, the dollars currently sitting overseas begin rushing back into the United States in a violent wave known as reverse currency flow. Trillions of dollars suddenly compete for the same limited supply of goods and services. At that point, inflation doesn't rise gradually, it detonates. Grocery prices double within months. Savings melt. A lifetime of work can lose half its value in a year. It becomes the kind of hyperinflation that destroys currencies and breaks nations. The third stage is the collapse of America's standard of living. For decades, the United States has consumed more than it produced, imported more than it exported, and financed the entire imbalance by issuing the very currency the world was forced to use. When that privilege ends, reality snaps back violently. Imports become painfully expensive. Electronics from China, clothing from Bangladesh, produce from Mexico, everything climbs beyond reach. Wages fail to keep up, and the comfortable lifestyle Americans once considered normal evaporates. Then comes the fourth stage, a full-scale fiscal crisis. With over $35 trillion in national debt and trillions more added every year, The US government has survived only because the world accepted newly printed dollars. Once the dollar loses its global role, printing becomes poison. Inflation accelerates. Borrowing becomes impossible. Washington faces choices no administration in history has confronted. Gut Social Security and Medicare, slash defense and federal programs, or default on the debt entirely. Every option triggers chaos. The fifth stage emerges as people desperately search for protection. Cash no longer offers safety because the currency itself is melting. Ordinary Americans watch the wealthy move quietly into hard assets, gold, silver, real estate, foreign accounts, while they cling to bank balances that lose value with every passing week. In this phase, tangible assets become lifeboats. Precious metals, land, energy stocks, and productive companies hold real value while the dollar crumbles. Those who diversify survive. Those who don't face devastation. The sixth stage reshapes the entire financial identity of the country. Capital begins escaping the US system altogether. Investors look overseas for stability, opening foreign bank accounts, moving savings into stronger currencies, buying property in nations like Switzerland or Singapore, and reducing exposure to the American financial grid. It isn't about disloyalty, it's about survival. When a ship is sinking, even patriots reach for lifeboats. This final stage is the true sign of reserve currency collapse. Not panic at home, but quiet exits abroad. By the time most people realize what's happening, the wealthy and informed have already slipped out the back door. As the crisis deepens, the seventh stage of personal preparation becomes essential, developing skills and relationships that retain their value even when money doesn't. In a fragile world where the financial system begins to stutter, the strongest form of wealth is the ability to repair what breaks, grow what you eat, solve real problems, and stand alongside a community that trusts and supports one another. This isn't about descending into doomsday prepper fantasies or burying yourself in a bunker. It's about rebuilding the kind of resilience previous generations took for granted, being able to protect your family without depending entirely on an economy that may not function the way it used to. And yet, as these shifts accelerate, many people still ask the same question. If all of this is true, why isn't it headline news? That question leads directly into the eighth stage of the unraveling, denial, suppression, and deliberate silence. Most reporters don't understand cross-border capital flows or reserve structure transitions. They chase the daily sugar rush of politics, scandals, and celebrity gossip. Meanwhile, the small number of insiders who do see the fault lines forming have every reason to keep the public calm. Panic triggers collapse. Concern sparks withdrawals. So they soothe the population with familiar reassurances, mock dissenters as conspiracy theorists, and repeat the same line that has preceded every major crisis. Everything is fine. The same script played out in 2007 when warnings about the housing bubble were dismissed, right up until the moment millions lost everything in 2008. But reality doesn't obey narratives, and the data now contradicts the official story at every turn. According to the IMF, the dollar's share of global reserves has fallen sharply from over 70% to under 59% and is sliding faster each year. The yuan, once irrelevant, now climbs steadily. Global trade settled in yuan has surged over 1,000% in just 5 years. Russia and China conduct nearly all bilateral trade in their own currencies. Saudi Arabia, the pillar of the petrodollar system, has openly hinted at accepting non-dollar payments for oil. The Shanghai Gold Exchange now dominates physical gold flows, positioning China at the center of a gold-anchored financial realignment. And the BRICS alliance, now expanding to include major populations and economies from every continent, is openly constructing an alternative system. These are not fringe developments. These are tectonic shifts, clear signals that the ninth stage of the transition has begun. The strategic repositioning of nations, institutions, corporations, and wealthy individuals away from the dollar and toward the emerging order. This stage is not loud, not dramatic. It happens quietly, bank reserves shifted, gold accumulated, new trade agreements signed behind the scenes. It is the phase where insiders prepare and the public sleeps. And then comes the 10th stage, acceptance, survival, and adaptation. This is the point where the average person finally realizes that the system they trusted is changing beneath their feet. Jobs disappear. Savings shrink. The political climate grows volatile as leaders scramble to respond. The dollar no longer commands unquestioned global obedience. It becomes one currency among several, not the cornerstone of world trade. And as this new reality settles in, the painful truth becomes impossible to ignore. The old world is not coming back. The people who survive this stage financially, emotionally, socially, aren't the ones who deny what's happening or cling to nostalgia. They're the ones who prepare now. They're the ones who diversify their wealth, reduce their vulnerability, expand their skills, and build networks of trust. They're the ones who understand that protecting your family isn't pessimism, it's responsibility. Because, as harsh as it sounds, the politicians who caused this crisis won't be the ones to save you. The elites who already moved their money offshore won't be the ones handing out lifelines. This transition is already underway, and the window to get ahead of it is narrowing month by month. In the end, every great financial shift in history comes down to one defining moment. The instant when ordinary people realize the world they assumed was permanent is already gone. Empires don't announce their decline. Reserve currencies don't schedule their collapse. These things happen slowly at first, then suddenly, and by the time the average person notices, the transformation is already irreversible. That's where we stand today. Not at the edge of a hypothetical future, but at the midpoint of a global reordering that has been building for decades. The warning signs aren't subtle anymore. They're woven into the actions of governments, central banks, and multinational alliances across the planet. China isn't guessing. The BRICS nations aren't experimenting. The countries realigning their reserves aren't confused or impulsive. They're positioning themselves for a world where the dollar is no longer the axis of global trade. Even America's closest allies are hedging, not because they want the dollar to fail, but because they can see the trajectory as clearly as you can see a storm approaching across open water. And this is the part no one wants to admit. Global systems don't collapse because of a single bad decision. They collapse because of thousands of decisions, made over years, sometimes generations, that slowly erode trust. Trillions printed without accountability. Wars funded with debt. Sanctions weaponized against half the world. Political leaders kicking the consequences further and further down the road, hoping someone else would deal with them. Now the bill has arrived and it's bigger than anyone expected. But here's the truth that history whispers again and again. Collapse is not the end, it's a transition. What matters most is whether you move with the transition or get crushed beneath it. And that's where your choices become more important than any headline or policy announcement. Because when currencies fall, something else rises. When one empire declines, another emerges. When one system loses trust, the world builds a new one. That cycle is older than Rome, older than Babylon, older than every financial chart ever drawn. You cannot control the cycle. But you can control your position inside it. This is why preparation isn't fear, it's agency. It's dignity. It's responsibility. It means refusing to hand your future to the same institutions that created this mess. It means learning the lessons that millions of people throughout history had to learn the hard way. That wealth stored in paper can disappear, that promises made by politicians can dissolve overnight, that stability is never guaranteed simply because you grew up with it. And yet, with all the uncertainty ahead, you still hold the one advantage that billions of people in past collapses never had: time. A shrinking window, yes, but a window nonetheless. Enough time to reposition your savings, to diversify your assets, to strengthen your household, to understand the global forces shaping the years ahead instead of becoming a victim of them. Most people won't use that time. They will cling to comfort. They will trust the old narratives. They will let pride blind them. And when the transition hits, they will be the ones asking how everything changed so fast. But you don't have to be one of them. This is the moment where you choose whether to stand still or step forward. Whether to hope the old system holds, or prepare for the new one already forming. Whether to let the collapse decide your fate, or shape your fate before the collapse arrives. The dollar's era is ending. A new financial order is rising. And history will remember those who saw it coming, not because they predicted it, but because they prepared. Whatever happens next, don't face it asleep. Don't face it unguarded. Don't face it empty-handed. Stay alert. Stay adaptive. Stay sovereign. Because the world that's coming won't reward those who wait. It will reward those who were ready.